So these were ascended masters like Kuan Yin, Paramahansa Yogananda. Who else did I see? Kali, Goddess, Sitting Bull, White Eagle, Prophet Muhammad, many, many others. And I remember the first one that I remembered from the moment he told me was when I was around the other side of the table at the opposite end of God, was Sitting Bull, and then to Sitting Bull's right was White Eagle. And I knew of White Eagle from when I was a teenager because my grandmother, my very Catholic grandmother, gave me this little book called The Quiet Mind that White Eagle had written. So I knew who he was. And he looked at me and he said very simply, he said, Megan, when you come across and you find a white feather, he said, I want you to ask yourself, are you doing or are you being? This is not a tribal thing. He said, I want you to ask yourself that question. And so I stood there and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to answer this right now. You know, that's what I thought. And I looked at him as if I was going to stumble through the answer. And he says, no, you don't have to answer it. He said, I don't want you to forget it. Hello, my name is Megan Brown. I grew up Roman Catholic, and I was involved in the Roman Catholic Church until I was 21 years old. But at age 20, a traumatic life event happened where I questioned and actually I questioned whether or not there was a God. And I, as a result of that, became an atheist. So until I was 38, so 18 years, I carried the belief that there was no God, there was nothing in the there was no afterlife. I didn't believe in anything until one day I was working out, going to the store. I had a girlfriend over for dinner with her kids, and I was in phenomenal health. I was a stay-at-home mom, and that night when I went to bed, I had a really, really upset stomach, and I couldn't understand why. And it got progressively worse, where I had to drive myself to the hospital in the middle of the night, and they didn't know what was happening with me because they didn't have a gastroenterologist at their hospital facility, but they did give me a painkiller and then sent me home, where I went home and fell asleep. And then I woke up in excruciating pain and had to go back to the hospital, where I spent the entire day waiting for somebody to help me. And it was a woman who suggested that I go to another hospital, a friend of mine, and she asked the ambulance driver, if your wife or sister or loved one was in this position that she's in, where would you send them? Which hospital? So he answered the question, and she said, okay, send her to that hospital. So it was 52 miles away. I was taken there and originally diagnosed with C. diff colitis, and they treated me for that for a few days, but it progressively kept getting worse. And the doctor didn't understand why. The nursing staff ignored me, and I had to fight for my life. So I remember calling the nursing station. Finally, the doctor came in and it accused me of being a drug seeker because I kept complaining about pain. And this was the first time that I heard something, and I heard, make a scene, make it big, or you won't make it out. So I knew how to, I was in a Catholic hospital, so I knew how to offend Catholics, and I did. And I said a lot of profanities. I fired my doctor, and he left. I don't know how much longer, went by, but another doctor hospitalist came in, and I looked at her, and I heard again, you can relax, she knows what she's doing. So that I relaxed, and she immediately knew that I was in kidney failure. I couldn't see myself, but I later found out that I'd gained 43 pounds of fluid in 3 days, and I turned gray. So she asked for the creatinine level test, and my whole life turned around. I was then taken to dialysis, and I had to start blood transfusions because the autoimmune disease that took them 4 days to figure out that I have now is called TTP-HUS, thrombotic thrombocytopenia purpura hemolytic uremic syndrome. The side effect is kidney failure. So it's really a blood disease that started in me, and they took tests and couldn't determine how I got it. So they started the blood transfusion, and then they started dialysis, and then I wound up going into heaven. And I remember walking through the clouds, and I could see one person standing under a tree. There was grass. It was kind of a park setting where there were trees around. The sky was blue. There were clouds in the sky. There were birds. And I looked at him and instinctively knew that was Jesus. I didn't believe in Jesus. So I looked at him and I said, "Oh my God, you really do exist." And he laughed, and he opened up his arms, and I walked toward him. He gave me a hug, and he turned me sideways, put his arm over my shoulder, and he said, "Come on, we have a lot of work to do." And I said, "I know, you're dealing with me," knowing that I was an atheist for so long. So then he took me to meet my other guides, Archangel Michael, El Moria, Saint Germain, and Mother Mary. And from there, we went into a golden capsule where I had my life review shown to me. And it was really intense. I couldn't believe, I mean, I believed, I saw it, but it was so strange to come from Earth and go into heaven, into a place I didn't even believe existed, and watch my life review. After I watched my life review, in your life review, when you do get it in the afterlife, after you leave this planet, you see every second of your life. You hear what you have said in the previous situations. You feel what you were feeling. You feel what others that were in the circumstance with you, how you made them feel. It's very intense. But after my life review, I had to go with Archangel Michael into another golden capsule where he asked me to kneel down before him, and he recited Psalm 91, the Aramaic version. As he held up his right hand, white light came out of his right hand onto my soul, my chest right here. And I remember it was so powerful, and it was so loving, and he was so intense. When he was done, I was crying, and he looked at me and he said, "Megan, why are you crying?" And I said, "Because I've been so mean to you guys. I didn't believe in anything, and I had nothing nice to say about any of you, and here you are showing me nothing but love." So he said, "I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to love you." And he said, I forget what he said at that point, but then cherubs came in and they had to dress me for heaven. So they dressed me in this white, I call it a toga, and there was a stole that came over, it was over my left shoulder, and it came down to a point on my right hip. And after the angels dressed me, I had to follow Archangel Michael. He said, "Come on, there's a lot of people waiting to meet you." And I said, there are people who want to meet me? I was totally clueless as to what was happening. And I had to meet up with Jesus again, Mother Mary, Saint Germain, and El Moria. And all of us walked toward this big white temple. And there was this huge door. It was gorgeous. There was a big dome in the center on the top. To the left and the right of the door, there were decks, little small decks that came out, and there was a cherub on each deck. They were gold. They were 100% gold, the cherubs were, and they were playing golden trumpets, alerting whoever was inside that I was coming. So when they opened the door for me and I walked in, I got hit with a wave of love. That was it. That's all I felt was love. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I saw this huge gold table and all of these chairs around it. It turns out there were 77 chairs, and all of these souls were sitting in these chairs, including other archangels. So I saw wings. I mean, they were sitting, the archangels were sitting. There were, as it turns out, there were 27 at my meeting there. And they all had wings that came up over their head and then came down and hit the floor. It's as if I floated to the table. I couldn't believe what was happening. And Jesus pulled my chair out and I sat down. Then Jesus sat to my left. And then there was this old man at the head of the table. I didn't know who he was. And then sitting to my right was Archangel Michael. And then I think it was Archangel Raphael, Archangel Gabriel, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, this old man starts talking. And everybody started listening to him. And I thought, who is this guy? Why is he so important that everybody is stopping and listening? And within the first 5 minutes of me sitting there, he announced, and Megan will be going back to Earth. And in my head only, in that moment, I said, O-F, the F word. I only thought it, I didn't say it out loud. And he stopped, he looked directly at me and he said, O-F is right, Megan. And then in that moment, I knew it was God. Because back in catechism, when I was a child and in the church, I was taught that God could hear your thoughts. So that's when I knew it was God, when I swore in his presence, in my mind only. So I said, oh, your holiness, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I felt so awkward. And he said, I have forgiven you. He said, it's a man-made word. I'm not offended. And he said, but be careful what you think, because I hear those too. So I had to walk around the table at least 77 times. I have no idea how long it took me to get all of this information, but each soul that I had to stand next to as they sat, they looked at me and gave me a piece of information that I needed to hold on to, and my soul retained. I only remember a few things that I heard there immediately from the moment that I was told, like they were giving me messages. So these were ascended masters like Kuan Yin, Paramahansa Yogananda, who else did I see? Kali, Goddess, Sitting Bull, White Eagle, Prophet Muhammad, many others. And I remember the first one that I remembered from the moment he told me was when I was around the other side of the table at the opposite end of God, was Sitting Bull, and then to Sitting Bull's right was White Eagle. And I knew of White Eagle from when I was a teenager, because my grandmother, my very Catholic grandmother, gave me this little book called The Quiet Mind that White Eagle had written. So I knew who he was. And he looked at me and he said very simply, he said, Megan, when you come across and you find a white feather, he said, I want you to ask yourself, are you doing or are you being? This is not a tribal thing. He said, I want you to ask yourself that question. And so I stood there and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to answer this right now. That's what I thought. And I looked at him as if I was going to stumble through the answer. And he says, no, 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 you don't have to answer it. He said, I don't want you to forget it. Now, I spent 5 days in heaven. So each heaven day, one heaven day equals 3 earth days. So I was out of it. Like, I don't know if they called it a coma that I was in, but for 2 weeks, I was not coherent. And I spent a long time learning a lot of things in heaven. I experienced different meetings. I had to meet with Jesus. I had to meet with Prophet Muhammad. I had to meet with King David. I had to meet with Sitting Bull. I had to meet with Kuan Yin. I had to meet with all of these souls. They all had messages for me. It was very beautiful. Well, I did receive a message as I was sitting at God's table before I was allowed into heaven. One of the things that he told me was that the United States was going to become a third world country. Now, I'm positive God told me everything that I needed to know, but he only allowed me to remember certain things. He did also tell me that China would become the world power. And I don't know this to be true. I don't follow the news. I have been watching the news because of the war going on right now in Gaza. And I'm so saddened by what's happening. It's beyond tragic. It's horrific. And it shouldn't be happening. If God told me that Gaza was going to be happening, I don't remember that. But he did while I was in temple with God and everybody sitting at God's table. The one main message that came out of God's mouth first was acceptance is synonymous with love. He was not the only one who said that to me while I was in heaven. Jesus said it to me. Archangel Michael said it to me. Kuan Yin said it to me. Prophet Muhammad said it to me. Everybody that was somebody that we would know here on earth said it to me. It was said so many times. And looking at our life right now, what our world is currently going through, it is such a significant message. It's multi-layered, in my opinion. Acceptance is not about accepting the bad in life, but accepting each other's differences. If someone's differences are not hurting another person, and I'm talking about, see, this is getting into a personal feeling, which, I have this feeling. So in other words, I grew up Roman Catholic. After my near-death experience, I don't follow a religion. Okay? I do believe in God. I do believe in Jesus. I do believe in King David. I do believe in Prophet Muhammad. I do believe in all of these beautiful souls who were here on earth setting forth on their journey to bring love's messages to humanity. Okay? I believe this now because of my experience. Can I convince anybody of my belief and that my belief is the right way? No. But what I do hope is that the one message that God, Jesus, and everybody said to me was acceptance is synonymous with love. So meaning treat one another as you would want to be treated yourself, which goes back, that was something that I learned in the Catholic Church growing up. That's one of the commandments, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time. But, you do unto others as you would do for yourself. But I believe that for everybody. I believe that everybody should be treated with equality. I believe that everybody should be treated with love. And if they're not acting in a loving manner, then they need to be stopped.
Yeah.
So that's what our world is facing right now. The next stage of our humanity.
Yeah.
I from what I've been told in heaven is that our world is going to change. And it has already started. December 21st, 2012. There was the new controlling factor, love. Okay, so God, I did meet him, but God was actually, he's now in a position where the Creator, okay, the Lord, is in control. And so it is now up to the Lord, who is the highest and holiest frequency of love, who is bringing about change for our world. But I do know from my near-death experience that our world will move into no war. I was told that 90% of wars will stop. At what point, I don't know. I don't remember that. But I was told that wars will stop and that the majority of our world will be a more loving world. Well, the second coming of Christ, as I learned in my near-death experience, has already happened. The second coming of Christ was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we murdered him. Humanity murdered him as well. So the second coming of Christ has already happened. If, as evil is progressing currently, and that's what's being shown, and that's what has done this horrific violence and murders of unbelievable. It's abhorrent what they have done to children, to mothers, to grandparents, to brothers, sisters, fathers, families throughout the world. They have rocked the world with their hate and their extremism. I hope I'm answering your question, but it is my belief that if we teach children, getting back to teaching love, we don't have to wait for whether or not you believe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the second coming of Christ or not. We don't have to wait for Jesus to come back, because I was an atheist for 18 years as well. Okay, so I come from a background of atheism myself, where I believed in nothing. But now that I have been set straight, so to speak, in heaven, and have met God, have met Jesus, have met Prophet Muhammad, have met King David, have met Kuan Yin, have met Paramahansa Yogananda, have met, oh gosh, so many beautiful souls. Why? Why do we have to wait? Why does humanity have to wait for somebody to come in and save them when we can save ourselves? We need to hold ourselves accountable as being a soul who was born onto this planet to be an example of love. That is truly why we were born and why the soul was created. The soul is an energy, a ball of energy. Okay, here. It's the engine of why it is that we're here on this planet. Okay? And if we are created as love, it is our job to nurture love and to teach love and to continue being an example of love. We don't need to wait for somebody else, the second coming of Christ, if that's what some want to believe. He's already been here and we murdered him then. I saw it in heaven, and I sat next to Jesus and I watched that life review of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated. And I looked at Jesus and I said, oh my God, we murdered you twice. And I don't remember if it was Jesus who told me that he was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I don't remember if it was Archangel Michael or God or Goddess. I don't remember, but I do know that that's what I saw. So I think, to answer your question, and I know I kind of went all over there, and forgive me, but it is so It is so poignant at this time in our lives as a world that we take responsibility of being an example of love for one another. My belief now, as a result of my near-death experience, as to why good people are suffering at the hands of merciless terrorists, especially with what's going on in our world right now. This has happened many, many times in our history, as you and I both know. My belief is that we need, as teachers, as parents, guardians, as a world, we need to start making it mandatory that we teach our children how to be kind, what compassion is. We need to teach a child what love is, how to love themselves, how to just accept themselves for who they are. Hate is not something that should be taught. And unfortunately, in our history, hate is taught. It's not something that we are born with innately. We don't hate, we love. One thing that humanity, any living species, animals included, everyone wants to feel loved. Everyone wants to feel loved. And everyone is deserving of love. Okay. So I believe that this is a message that needs to be taught and it should be mandatory throughout our world, that we teach children how to love, what kindness means, what compassion means, what honesty means, what integrity means, that everyone has the ability to go within and listen to their soul speak. Because the way that our soul is, it is our guide as well. So we as humans, and I should speak for myself, but I'm not alone. People have been told in their lives, it's your gut feeling, it's your gut instinct, it's my sixth sense. Well, really, that's our soul talking to us. So if we listen to our souls, we can hear what it is that we need to do, okay? But what I believe at this point in my life, because of my near-death experience, I pray daily or meditate every day, and I connect to heaven, and I know that heaven exists. I know it. I don't just believe it. I don't just have faith that it exists. I know it from personal experience. So I know that when I call on God, Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, yes, I do pray to him, King David, Sitting Bull, White Eagle, Goddess, Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, and the list goes on. When I call upon all of these souls, I know I'm connecting with the highest and holiest frequencies of love. And that is what they all want us as humans, humanity, to know, is that they are examples of being the highest and holiest frequencies of love. So when I connect with love, I listen. I will ask a question. I will listen. If I'm doing a reading with somebody, because that's the gift that I got after meeting them all in heaven, I listen to what their guidance is. I listen, they give me visuals, I can see, I can feel, I can sometimes taste, sometimes smell. Those two are rare, smelling and tasting. I can feel an object, and I can get a read on a situation. It's pretty amazing, but I know I'm connecting to love. So I know I'm being guided by love when I connect with others, and anyone can do this. I have the ability to help people understand how they can connect to heaven. What I do, in case you want to try this at home, is I pray. I say, dear God, angels, guides, archangels. I call on specific deities, and I ask them to connect with me as the highest and holiest frequencies of love that they are. Surround me in a golden capsule, a golden bubble, okay, that is only the highest and holiest frequency of love. I am now connecting to heaven, and everything. So I am declaring to heaven that everything that I'm going to hear, see, feel, touch, if I am given the opportunity of somebody saying, can you feel these keys? So whatever I touch, I am retrieving energy. I am retrieving information from heaven. And I know heaven is guiding me. So I deliver the information to the person that I'm connected with.